Welcome to the skies where a single engine could rewrite the rules of war. March 1945. An English airfield shrouded in mist and frost. Engines idled, then roared with a violence that made the ground tremble. Boots crunching on frozen mud, gloved hands gripping gauges, pilots scanning horizons that held shadows of death. They called it the mighty Midget. Small in name, monstrous in power. The Merlin engine under its nose, a masterpiece of engineering, throbbed like a living heart. Pushing a Mustang to 437 miles per hour, slicing through clouds at 25,000 feet, faster than rumor, faster than fear. Before we begin, leave a comment where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening. Share the moment you feel the engine's fury. The first liftoff, the moment when metal becomes predator. The air is thick with anticipation. Frost sparkles against aluminum skin. Pilots check instruments again and again. Each lever, each dial a lifeline. A single mistake could mean oblivion. Above, clouds waited like silent witnesses. Shadows of enemy fighters lurking far below. The ground crews whispered in awe. Tales of Mustangs appearing from nowhere, diving through enemy formations, machine guns roaring like lightning. And yet all of it, every whispered legend, every fleeting rumor, carried a kernel of truth. The mighty Midget was more than metal. It was a predator, a legend, a reckoning. The Merlin engine pulsed alive, commanding obedience. Fuel-ignited pistons, hammered propellers spun. Tires screamed against the tarmac. Release. Lift-off, and silence. Before the roar returned, deeper, hungrier. It was alive, demanding, unforgiving. The sky held its breath, the enemy unaware. Shadows shrinking beneath silver wings. Speed and power ruling above. And every pilot trusting machine more than instinct. Some swore they could hear the growl even after it vanished into mist. The sound of destiny taking flight. Of fear etched into the enemy's soul. The ground watched frozen, hearts pounding in unison with engines, and the hunt had only just begun. March 1945. The English countryside lay beneath a brittle winter sun. Frost glimmered on rooftops, hedgerows, and the edges of airfields catching the light in tiny fleeting diamonds. Fog rolled across fields and hangars alike, a ghostly veil that swallowed the sound of engines until the first Mustang's Merlin sputtered to life. The ground vibrated, metal hummed, propellers sliced the mist into spirals of silver. Pilots emerged from shadowed hangars, faces drawn tight under goggles, scarves wrapped to shield them from the chill. They moved with quiet precision, each step deliberate. Each breath visible, a living rhythm of tension and anticipation. The 52nd Fighter Group had been stationed here for weeks. Intelligence reports had warned of increasing Luftwaffe activity. Reconnaissance photos showed clusters of Messerschmitts refueling on captured airstrips, flying low to avoid detection. They had counted 400 enemy fighters in the previous sortie. Yet these numbers did little to calm the nerves of men who had seen friends torn from the skies. They had learned to trust data and instruments, yet feared what the numbers could not convey. The air smelled of oil exhaust and frost, a scent that seemed to carry both promise and death. Mechanics crawled beneath wings, checking every rivet, every wire, every control surface. They whispered numbers, fuel pressures, RPM, manifold temperatures, like prayers to a machine that had become their guardian, their executioner and their legend. Engines ticked, coughed, then roared in unison. The Mustang squadron lined up on the tarmac, silver fuselages glinting, propellers spinning. Every line of metal seemed to breathe, to strain, to anticipate the sky. Beyond the airfield, the world was a mix of stillness and menace. Hedgerows creaked in the wind. The distant River Thames reflected cold sun in slow, glimmering pulses. Villages huddled beneath clouds, unaware of the hunters above. And above it all, the enemy lay in wait, invisible, patient, and confident, believing altitude and numbers would protect them. Yet the Allied airmen had a secret: the Merlin engine, a heart of fire that could outclimb, outrun, and outmaneuver any threat. The briefing room smelled of chalk dust and cigarette smoke. Maps strewn across tables, red markers denoting enemy positions. Lines traced with fingers, calculations murmured under breath. Take off at 0700, climb to 25,000, intercept over the Rhine. Orders were precise. Each pilot memorized every coordinate, every altitude, every expected threat. Yet all preparation faced one immutable variable: the sky itself, unpredictable, cold, alive, and waiting to test courage, skill, and the limits of engineering. Outside, the soundscape shifted. A distant church bell tolled. A dog barked. But the low hum of Merlin engines began to dominate. A vibration felt more than heard, resonating in chests, shaking mud from boots, vibrating the air like a heartbeat of war. Smoke curled from exhausts, dissolving into fog. Shadows shifted, glinting off polished aluminum. The airfield seemed to hold its breath, a tableau suspended between calm and chaos. Pilots mounted their machines, gloves tightening around control sticks, goggles fogging from breath, helmets secured, the cold biting through leather jackets. Each man carried not just training, but history letters from home, photographs of sisters and mothers, memories of towns left behind. And yet, above all, a single unspoken thought survived: the sky, complete the mission, bring the Mustang home. The engine's growl deepened, propellers spun faster, and slowly the squadron moved forward, taxiing across frost-slick tarmac wings, aligned, ready for the moment when the earth would fall away beneath them. The runway stretched ahead like a promise and a threat. The first Mustang roared forward, tires screeching. Liftoff came in a violent, deliberate surge. Metal strained, propellers sliced the mist, and then air, cold, thin, alive. The Mustang climbed with a grace that defied expectation, and in the distance clouds stirred as if sensing the predator. Behind the squadron, ground crews waved, faces etched with awe and fear. The airfield itself seemed diminished, emptying of sound and presence, as though the very act of ascent had pulled life from the earth and given it to the sky. At 10,000 feet, visibility improved. Frost dissipated from windshields. The sun glanced off polished wings, and the world below became a patchwork of rivers, fields, and villages. Each pilot scanned the horizon, sharp eyes seeking movement, anticipating enemy fighters emerging from shadow. The Merlin engine pulsed, each cylinder firing in perfect rhythm, a living thing, responding to the pilot's every command with immediacy, with power, with lethal precision. At that altitude, the Mustang could outclimb every enemy fighter, outpace every bomber, and strike where least expected. The human element was never absent. Fear mixed with exhilaration. Hearts raced. Hands ached from tension. The cold seeped into bones. Yet focus sharpened. Muscles responded instinctively, honed from hours of practice and raw instinct. Pilots spoke and clipped radio chatter, coordinates, confirmation of altitude status updates. The air vibrated with tension. Every transmission a thread in the fabric of a deadly dance. And beneath the surface of tactics and physics, folklore lingered. Stories passed from one squadron to another, of Mustangs appearing from nowhere, of silver streaks diving through clouds, disappearing before the enemy could comprehend. Whispered tales of pilots claiming to see figures in the mist, guiding them, warning them, or perhaps mocking their enemies. The line between fact and legend blurred, as all true tales of war do. The stage was set, the sky, the airfield, the crews, the enemy, all waiting for the signal. The Merlin engine humming with life was the silent commander, the unseen hand, the arbiter of fate for those who would meet it in the clouds. And as the squadron leveled at 15,000 feet, the world below seemed smaller, more fragile, as if history itself had shifted its gaze. The mighty Midget, no longer just an aircraft, had become a symbol, a harbinger, a machine capable of turning war into a spectacle of speed, power, and deadly precision. Even now, decades later, historians still pause at the thought of a single squadron climbing above the English fields in March 1945. The sun glinting off silver wings, engines singing a song of inevitability, and the enemy unaware, moving into a trap they could not see. The landscape was not just physical, it was a living canvas. Each cloud, each river, each village, a note in a symphony orchestrated by the Merlin engine, conducted by skill and feared by all who would face it. And so, as the Mustangs reached their cruising altitude, the world settled into a tense quiet. Birds scattered from trees, distant church bells echoed, the hum of engines dominated, and the story of the mighty Midget predator of the sky had only just begun. The context was complete, the stage was set, and the hunt awaited. The Merlin engine, a compact powerhouse, humming beneath the polished aluminum skin of the P-51 Mustang. It produced 1,490 horsepower, measured at the crankshaft, a figure that alone could outmatch almost any fighter in the Luftwaffe arsenal. Each cylinder fired in precise sequence. Pistons hammered, valves opened and closed, fuel ignited with explosive timing, propellers slicing air into invisible wedges, creating thrust that could hurl the Mustang to 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. That altitude, thin, cold, merciless, where human lungs strain and instruments falter. The Merlin thrived, delivering speed, power, and reliability in an unforgiving sky. Allied engineers had spent months testing every variant. Packard-built, hand-assembled, tuned for maximum efficiency. Every engine logged 200 hours of ground tests before it ever felt the drag of air. They recorded compression ratios, torque curves, manifold pressures, numbers scribbled in logbooks, repeated again and again. Cylinder 6 running slightly lean. Adjust magneto timing. Check supercharger boost. Each adjustment could mean the difference between life and death. The Mustang carried 6 Browning 50 caliber machine guns, ammunition load of 1,800 rounds per minute, enough to shred wings, fuselage, and morale in seconds. Ground crews calculated bullet trajectories and recoil patterns. Engineers balanced weight to avoid destabilizing the aircraft at high speed. Every decision informed by data, every calculation verified by multiple observers. The machine was coldly precise, yet in the hands of a skilled pilot it became art. Test pilots had documented climb rates: 200 feet per minute at takeoff, 3,000 feet per minute sustained above 15,000 feet. Turning radius calculated against Messerschmitt Bf-109s. Dive speeds recorded to 500 mph without structural failure. Each specification written in black ink, filed in the U.S. War Department's classified folders. These numbers were more than statistics. They were promises, guarantees, threats, written in steel and fire. Reports from the front added context. Squadron logs from the 52nd Fighter Group noted multiple interceptions over the Rhine. Enemy aircraft unable to reach our altitude. Mustang advantage confirmed. Fuel consumption within predicted parameters. Pilots remarked on control responsiveness. The instantaneous feedback from control surfaces. The engine's throttle answering every twitch of the hand. Some recorded feeling almost a living presence in the cockpit, as if the machine itself knew the enemy. Engineers had optimized the supercharger system, a two-stage, two-speed mechanism, delivering critical boost at high altitude. Pilots marveled at its power, a sensation of being pushed into the seat. Acceleration so smooth yet so immediate, it felt like the laws of physics themselves had been rewritten. Oil systems maintained temperature even under prolonged climbs. Coolant flowed, pistons glided. Vibration minimized. Metal stress monitored. Everything calculated, measured, and refined. Yet facts alone cannot capture the legend. Anecdotes from pilots whispered of almost supernatural capabilities, of climbing faster than enemy fighters could track, of diving so sharply the horizon seemed to curve. Some described the Merlin engine as having a heartbeat, a living rhythm guiding them, warning them, urging them forward. Stories of Mustangs appearing from the clouds, silhouetted in sun engines, roaring like a beast, chasing shadows that would vanish into eternity. Every technical manual, every diagram, every flight log reinforced the same truth: speed and altitude dominance. The Mustang could engage, outclimb, outgun, and escape. Its ceiling at 41,900 feet made it untouchable to many enemy fighters. The Merlin engine pumping out 1.3 atmospheres of boost, propellers spinning at 3,200 RPM, aerodynamic design reducing drag, streamlined fuselage and laminar flow wings, all contributing to an aircraft that could turn the tide of aerial encounters. The statistics were cold, clinical, yet their impact was visceral. Allied intelligence calculated loss ratios, enemy aircraft downed per sortie, pilot survival rates, probability models predicting interception success, and the numbers were staggering. The Mustang's technical advantage translated directly into lives saved, missions completed, airspace secured. One squadron, 15 aircraft, could hold a corridor that 10 times as many enemy fighters might have contested. Engineers also documented endurance, maximum range with drop tanks 650 miles, sufficient to escort bombers deep into enemy territory. The Merlin engine's efficiency made extended operations possible. Long climbs, high-speed dashes, rapid maneuvering. Endurance balanced with lethal capacity. A machine not just of speed, but of strategy. Each data point a line in the larger narrative of victory. Yet fact and folklore intertwined. Mechanics swore engines hummed differently at dawn. Pilots felt subtle variations in air pressure as warnings. Some claimed that a Mustang flying over the same field twice in the morning would behave differently each time, as if the engine had memory, instinct, a personality, perhaps exaggeration, perhaps truth, but all underscored the aura surrounding the mighty Midget. Official documents noted repair intervals, piston replacement after 250 flight hours, supercharger inspection after 100 hours. Yet frontline squadrons reported engines exceeding specifications. Reliability in battle unmatched. Even when strafing or diving at maximum speeds, the Merlin performed flawlessly. Its robustness earned the respect of pilots and engineers alike. A single failure was rare, yet the legend of invincibility spread faster than the planes themselves. Ground crews added their perspective. Hours spent adjusting carburetors, checking fuel pumps, aligning propellers. The hum of the workshop, the smell of oil, grease, and sweat, whispered encouragements. She'll fly like nothing you've seen. Trust the engine. Their faith in numbers and mechanics translated into confidence in battle. And that confidence became deadly when the Mustang soared. Pilots' diaries preserved both fact and emotion. Lieutenant Carter wrote, "At 25,000 feet, the Merlin sang. The throttle responded instantly. I felt invincible. Yet I knew one miscalculation could end it all." Sergeant Miller noted, "Every cylinder, every click of the prop, every vibration, it was alive. It moved with me, not against me." These first-hand accounts confirmed what data suggested, that the engine was more than metal, more than specifications. It was the edge between survival and annihilation. By combining technical precision with pilot skill, the P-51 Mustang became more than an aircraft. It became a symbol of Allied air superiority. Every horsepower counted. Every bullet fired calculated. Every climb, dive, and turn executed with mathematical exactness. The Merlin engine was the heart, the lifeblood, the unseen hand that could tip aerial engagements in favor of those who understood it. Even decades later, historians study the logs, manuals, flight data. They marvel at the meticulous engineering, the foresight in design, the seamless integration of power and maneuverability. And yet the legend persists, of silver streaks appearing over Europe, of Mustangs that could outpace fear itself, engines singing with lethal rhythm. Fact and folklore intertwined, creating a narrative that endures. The mighty Midget, powered by its Merlin heart, was a triumph of engineering, a terror in the skies, a combination of horsepower, design, and human skill. It transformed the air above Europe, redefining what was possible at 25,000 feet. Every number, every logbook entry, every diary quote reinforced the same truth in the clouds. Precision, power, and performance became destiny. Lieutenant Carter gripped the control stick with gloved hands, knuckles white against leather. Sweat mingled with frost on his brow. The canopy rattled gently as the Mustang rose through the thin, cold air. He inhaled, a shallow breath, the oxygen barely enough to sustain thought. Yet focus sharpened, every sound amplified. The hum of the Merlin engine beneath him, the rush of air against the wings, the faint echo of distant gunfire. Each element combined into a rhythm, a heartbeat that dictated life or death. Around him, the other Mustangs leveled in formation, silver glints catching the sun propellers slicing the clouds. Eyes scanned the horizon. German fighters, distant and ominous silhouettes against the rising light. Anticipation pressed against the chest like a physical weight. Every pilot knew the protocols, memorized every maneuver, every response. Yet nothing could prepare them for the moment the enemy appeared. The instant the sky became a battlefield. A flash of black Messerschmitt 109s diving from cover. Carter adjusted his throttle, climbing at maximum speed. The Mustang responded instantly. Pitch and yaw aligned with his intention. Every lever, every dial obeyed. And in that instant, instinct merged with engineering. A symbiosis, man and machine functioning as one. Bullets whipped past, a staccato reminder of mortality. Corporal Jenkins in the rear seat of the lead aircraft shouted over the roar of the engines. Target at 2 o'clock, diving fast. The call sliced through the hum of machinery. Carter banked sharply. Wings tilted, air rushing past, instruments flickering. A near miss. The fighter above barely visible. The air trembled with kinetic energy. The clouds themselves seemed to recoil. On the ground, mechanics peered through binoculars, watching the silver streaks ascend, twist, and engage. Whispers of awe carried on the wind. "She's alive," one murmured. "More than a machine. She moves like she thinks." They could not see the bullets, the maneuvers, the split-second decisions. Only the dance of metal and sky. Carter tracked his prey. The Messerschmitt weaving. Every movement predicted by instinct, honed over countless simulations and sorties. The Merlin engine roared in reply, thrusting the Mustang forward, climbing faster than any fighter could anticipate. Altitude became a weapon. Speed an ally. Every pull on the stick, every throttle adjustment, a negotiation with physics, with life itself. A tracer round zipped past, sparks against aluminum. Carter felt the vibration through the stick. A warning. Yet exhilaration surged. The paradox of fear and control. Adrenaline sharpening perception. He dove engines screaming, and the enemy fighter staggered. The sky became a chessboard. Each maneuver a calculated risk. Yet no diagram could fully account for human instinct paired with mechanical perfection. Sergeant Miller, flying to Carter's left, leaned into the turn, eyes scanning, hands steady. "Engage now," he called. The Mustangs converged, a synchronized strike born of training courage and trust in the Merlin heart beneath them. The roar of 650 caliber guns erupted, tracers cutting arcs of light through mist and cloud. Shadows twisted, metal screamed, and in that chaos precision, the P-51 struck, a lethal ballet. The enemy faltered. One fighter spiraled away, engines smoking. Carter banked sharply, pulling back the Mustang, climbing with ease. The wind whipping past ears, ringing eyes, burning from sun and ice. He exhaled slowly, adrenaline still racing. Each pilot a solitary figure in a mechanical predator, yet part of a larger symphony of speed power and deadly intent. Memories of home flickered. Letters in the pocket. A mother's handwriting. A sister's smile. Yet focus never wavered. The human element. Courage, fear, intuition, interwoven with machine precision. Each Mustang pilot carried responsibility not just for themselves, but for bombers below, for comrades, for history unfolding in real time. And every heartbeat synchronized with the pulse of the Merlin engine. In the clouds, maneuvers became legend. Pilots described moments later in diaries. "She responded before I could think. I felt the engine guiding me. Alive, aware, merciless." Folklore merged with fact. Mechanics whispered tales of Mustangs appearing from fog banks, vanishing before enemy eyes, then reappearing to strike. Stories of ghosts in silver fuselage. The legend of the mighty Midget grew with every sortie. Carter dove through cloud cover, sun glinting off wings. Another fighter appeared. At 25,000 feet, the rules of engagement altered. The thin air, the cold, the altitude itself became allies. The Merlin engine pushed the Mustang faster, higher, sharper than anything designed to oppose it. The pilot felt the machine respond to thought, almost a living partner. Every turn, every climb, every dive executed with lethal grace. Communication crackled. Red flight left flank. Contact. Each radio call a thread in the fabric of survival. Coordination, trust, and instinct intertwined. Enemy fire traced arcs in the sky. Bullets cut air and metal alike. Clouds offered cover. Shadows danced. The airfield below seemed distant, irrelevant. Only the sky mattered. Only the hunt. Only the pulse of steel and fire. Minutes stretched, or perhaps seconds. Time distorted in the thin, freezing air. Carter maneuvered, adjusted. The Mustang obedient, merciless, perfect. The legend of the Merlin engine was not in numbers, but in these moments. When human and machine became one. When split-second decisions decided life or death. When the sky itself seemed to bend to their will. And then the engagement ended. Enemy retreating. Mustangs regrouping. Engines thrumming in satisfaction, exhaustion, exhilaration. Sweat freezing on faces. Gloves stiff, hearts pounding. The human scene complete. Victory achieved through skill, courage, and an engine that defied expectation. Yet even as they leveled off, breathing heavy, scanning horizons, they knew more battles awaited, more challenges. The story of the mighty Midget continued. From below the ground, crews cheered silently, binoculars trained, engines echoing, the legend expanding with every maneuver, every victory, every heartbeat. Diaries would record it, memoirs would immortalize it, and the sky itself seemed to remember. Every pilot a part of the tale, every Mustang a character, every Merlin engine a heartbeat that would echo through history. The human scene, a convergence of courage, fear, skill, and machine, demonstrated what no statistic could fully capture. The sky became a stage, the Mustang and its Merlin engine the performers, the pilots, the narrators of their own lives. Every dive, turn, and climb a sentence in a story written in clouds, sunlight, and steel. And the audience history itself watched in awe. The sky above Europe in March 1945 was a theater of contrasts. Sheer numbers on one side, precision and engineering on the other. Germany had amassed over 400 fighters in the region. Messerschmitts, Focke-Wulfs, the stalwart 109s, each engineered for speed, climb, and dogfight supremacy. On paper, they should have dominated, outgunned, outnumbered. Yet the Mustang, powered by its Merlin engine, moved through the clouds with a grace and lethality that numbers alone could not predict. Allied intelligence had done the math. 42 Mustangs against 400 enemy aircraft. Odds impossible on paper. Yet the reality unfolded differently. Speed, altitude, and firepower transformed the equation. The Merlin engine produced consistent thrust, 490 horsepower, at altitudes that rendered enemy superchargers inefficient. The Mustang climbed faster, reached operational ceiling before interceptors could react. Every calculation, every logbook entry, every diagram reinforced a simple truth: power and design outweighed mere quantity. The contrast was immediate. One sortie demonstrated it clearly. Messerschmitts dove in coordinated attack. 400 aircraft, trained, disciplined, confident. 4 Mustangs leveled and climbed. Pilots adjusting throttle, trimming rudders, trusting instruments, trusting the Merlin engine. The response time was instantaneous, a calculated advantage. Enemy guns firing, tracers arcing through cloud and sky. Mustangs weaving, diving, climbing, outmaneuvering the attackers, and the numbers that should have dictated outcome became irrelevant. Ground reports confirmed what pilots felt. Enemy aircraft lost cohesion. Formations scattered. The numerical advantage of the Luftwaffe evaporated in the face of mechanical superiority. Outgunned yet outranged. Outnumbered yet overwhelming. Words scribbled in after-action reports. The Merlin engine delivered not just power but reliability. Each climb, dive, and turn executed flawlessly. Fuel consumption balanced with mission length. Supercharger efficiency maintaining boost at 25,000 feet. Metal stressed yet never failed. Performance consistent. Predictable, yet terrifying to the enemy. Pilots' diaries captured the visceral truth. Lieutenant Carter wrote, "They had hundreds, we had dozens. Yet the sky belonged to us. The Mustang moved like an extension of my will." The Merlin engine responded before thought. It was alive. Sergeant Miller echoed. Every cylinder, every spark, every vibration. It was guidance. A silent hand turning the tide. In these accounts, fact and folklore intertwined. The numbers reinforced legend, and the legend validated numbers. Enemy pilots recognized it too. Intercepted messages recorded fear. The Mustangs climbed faster than expected. Impossible speeds at altitude. Guns accurate beyond estimation. They underestimated the combination of engineering and instinct. Altitude dominance meant Messerschmitts had to climb to engage, each ascent losing speed, each maneuver reducing their chance of survival. The data was stark. The mighty Midget ceiling at 41,900 feet outstripped most enemy aircraft. Climb rates exceeding 3,000 feet per minute. Acceleration immediate. The physics of air and gravity were allies of the Mustang. Fact and folklore merged in vivid moments. Pilots recounted seeing enemy formations break apart before engagement, shadows twisting in clouds, tracers reflecting sunlight, Mustangs appearing as if from nowhere, swooping in synchronized strikes, the Merlin engine thrumming like a heartbeat in every attack. Mechanics on the ground whispered that engines sang differently at dawn. Pilots joked that the Mustang had instinct, intuition, and the enemy seemed to sense it too late. Operational reports quantified the impact. Sorties flown, kills confirmed, losses minimized. 42 Mustangs escorted 60 bombers to target. No losses. Enemy fighters intercepted at 25,000 feet. Engagement outcome overwhelmingly in favor of Mustangs. Each figure cold, precise, yet each one resonated with human consequence. Victories measured not just in numbers, but in lives saved, missions completed, airspace secured. The Merlin engine was the constant variable, the defining factor in impossible equations. Even the enemy logs confirmed anomaly. Reports of silver streaks outmaneuvering formations, guns that seemed to strike with unerring accuracy, aircraft appearing from above, below, and behind in moments. The legend of the mighty Midget grew with each sortie, outgunned yet unstoppable, outnumbered yet supreme. Numbers alone could not account for the combination of human skill and mechanical perfection. The engine's performance enabled strategic advantages, long-range escort missions, deep strikes over enemy territory, sustained high-speed climbs, and precision attacks. The Mustang could engage, disengage, and escape at will, each maneuver calculated in milliseconds, controlled by pilot, executed by engine, a lethal partnership. One squadron could hold an entire corridor. The equation of war rewritten in metal and horsepower. Pilots often described moments when the engine seemed to anticipate them. Subtle cues, vibrations, responses faster than reaction time. It was as though the Merlin knew where the enemy would be and where I needed to be. Sergeant Miller's diary recorded the sensation repeatedly, a living heartbeat beneath me, guiding, supporting, killing. Fact and folklore entwined seamlessly. The machine, the man, and the environment merged into one lethal instrument. The contrast was not only in numbers, but in psychology. Luftwaffe pilots reported confusion, hesitation, fear, formations broken before full engagement, morale shattered, speed and altitude rendered training insufficient. Precision and reliability were invisible advantages, yet lethal. The mighty Midget was not just a technical triumph, it was a psychological weapon, a symbol of inevitability. Technical comparisons filled the reports. Engine output versus enemy climb capability, turn radius versus expected dogfight engagements, maximum speed versus enemy intercept speeds. Every calculation favoring the Mustang. The narrative became undeniable superior engineering, pilot skill, and calculated aggression could overcome sheer numbers. Every sortie reinforced the pattern. Every engagement confirmed the lethal formula. And yet, amidst cold calculations, legend persisted. Tales of Mustangs slicing through enemy formations, of Merlin engines singing in unison with pilots' thoughts, whispered stories on airfields, of silver streaks striking, vanishing, and striking again. The line between fact and folklore blurred, the story becoming larger than numbers, as all true legends do. By the end of March 1945, the pattern was clear. The Merlin-powered Mustang had rewritten expectations. Outnumbered squadrons dominating skies, speed and altitude converting disadvantage into supremacy, reliability, precision, and lethal intent creating a formula no enemy could match. The data was absolute, the results unmistakable, and the legend immortal. Every number, every specification, every diary entry underscored one truth. The mighty Midget, guided by pilot instinct and powered by the Merlin engine, could turn the impossible into reality. Outgunned yet victorious, outnumbered yet supreme, outmatched yet untouchable. The contrast was absolute, and it set the stage for moments that would define aerial combat forever. Fact Layer 2 complete. The stage set. The enemy demoralized. The human element tested, and the sky itself prepared for the turn. The payoff. The high-stakes reckoning. Awaited. The sky fell silent. A calm after the storm. Engines idled in the thin air, though the hum of the Merlin persisted like a heartbeat slowly fading. Below, the fields of Europe stretched endlessly. Villages untouched, rivers reflecting pale light. And yet the echoes of combat lingered, a memory etched into metal, into clouds, into the minds of men. Pilots exhaled, shoulders slumping, goggles fogged, breath visible in the cold, adrenaline slowly draining. Victory, survival, both uncertain until the final turn. Reports filtered back, intelligence noting destroyed enemy fighters, bombers escorted safely to targets, sorties completed with minimal losses. The math, the specifications, the engine data all confirmed what the pilots felt instinctively. The Merlin engine had not merely powered aircraft, it had dictated outcomes. At 25,000 feet, the balance of power had shifted. Sheer numbers meant nothing against altitude, speed, and precision. Outgunned, outnumbered, yet overwhelming. The sky had been conquered not by quantity, but by design, by foresight, by mechanical perfection. Back on the tarmac, mechanics and crews waited, scanning clouds, watching silver streaks descend, their hands still slick with oil tools set aside. A reverent silence among men accustomed to chaos. They whispered among themselves. She lived. She killed. She came home. The legend of the mighty Midget expanded with every successful sortie. Tales of impossible maneuvers, of bullets evaded, of enemy aircraft outpaced. Stories mingled with data, a narrative born of fact and folklore. Lieutenant Carter removed his helmet, hair plastered with sweat, face pale from the altitude and exertion. He surveyed his Mustang, polished aluminum glinting in fading light. The aircraft seemed almost alive, the Merlin engine's pulse still vibrating in every rivet. A sense of reverence mingled with exhaustion. The pilot and machine partners in lethality, both survivors of the invisible crucible above Europe. He scribbled notes in his logbook, details of maneuvers, altitudes, timing, but also words that hinted at wonder, at awe, at a quiet fear of the machine's perfection. Across the continent, enemy reports reflected disbelief, formations scattered, pilots downed, morale shaken. The mighty Midget's reputation preceded it. Silver streaks, impossible speeds, guns precise, aircraft appeared from nowhere. Each report carried numbers but also stories. Fear documented alongside loss, precision recorded alongside legend. And in these reports, the effect of the Merlin engine became clear, not only as a tool but as a psychological weapon, an invisible hand shifting the tide. Debriefings revealed patterns, climb rates, acceleration, turn radius, all surpassing enemy capabilities. Engineers and tacticians marveled at the integration of human skill and mechanical engineering. Every sortie logged, every metric analyzed, pilots' instincts matched with the data. The result: dominance in the air, strategic advantage in the sky. Each victory measured, quantified, yet the stories that emerged transcended numbers, a symphony of fact and folklore. Airmen recounted narrow escapes, bullets grazing fuselage, enemy fighters spiraling out of control. Yet the Mustang, obedient to every command, precise and responsive, delivered its pilots safely. The Merlin engine's reliability became legendary, a machine trusted implicitly, capable of repeated high-stress maneuvers. propellers slicing air cylinders, hammering rhythmically every vibration, a pulse that connected pilot to aircraft. At that altitude, every movement was amplified, every decision critical, and yet control remained absolute. Some pilots described a sensation beyond skill, a partnership with the engine, as if it anticipated threats, responded before thought. The thin air, the cold, the vast sky became instruments in a deadly symphony. Every climb, dive, and turn synchronized with machine mind and environment. Diaries recorded it, logs confirmed it, mechanics whispered it, and the stories grew. The mighty Midget was no longer simply a plane. It was legend, a predator of the skies, an arbiter of fate. The psychological impact on enemy pilots was profound. Hesitation, miscalculation, retreat. Formations broken before full engagement. The combination of engineering superiority and pilot skill created a force multiplier, outnumbered yet supreme. The mighty Midget turned disparity into dominance. Altitude, speed, and firepower fused to produce tactical supremacy. Every encounter reinforced the same reality. The numbers could not overcome precision. The machine had become destiny. On the ground, the aftermath was palpable. Crews celebrated quietly, understanding both the danger and the miracle of survival. Fuel lines drained, guns, cleaned, logs updated. Yet the aura of the aircraft remained. Whispers of the engine's heartbeat. Tales of impossible maneuvers. Pilots shared stories of enemy fighters vanishing into clouds only to be engaged moments later. The line between reality and legend blurred, yet fact supported myth. Each sortie, each engine note, each victory documented and confirmed. The impact was strategic as well. Bomber missions escorted successfully, critical targets destroyed, operational theaters cleared. The Merlin engine enabled the Mustang to achieve what many thought impossible. Efficiency, reliability, speed, and power fused into a weapon capable of defining campaigns. Pilots trusted the machine implicitly. Mission planners relied on its consistency. And history would remember both. Even decades later, historians reference those sorties, analyzing performance metrics, engine reliability, combat effectiveness, and yet personal accounts breathe life into the numbers. It felt alive. It moved with me. It protected me. The mighty Midget's legend was born at 25,000 feet, in freezing air amidst clouds and gunfire. A combination of man and machine, fact and folklore, precision and instinct. Victory at the moment of engagement gave way to reflection. Pilots gazed over Europe, forests, rivers, villages beneath a sky now silent. The Merlin engine cooled, yet its pulse lingered, a reminder of what had occurred, of lives saved, of missions completed, of enemies outmatched. The human and mechanical elements intertwined, leaving echoes that would persist for decades. Some lessons were obvious. Engineering excellence could outweigh numbers. Skill and training multiplied by reliable machinery produced dominance. Yet others were intangible. The psychological edge, the aura of inevitability, the belief in the machine's perfection. The mighty Midget had achieved both, a calculated weapon and a legend, simultaneously. And as the sun set over the fields, casting long shadows across frozen earth, pilots removed helmets, gloves, and masks. Mechanics set down tools. Yet the stories continued. Whispered, written, remembered. The aftermath was not just tactical, it was cultural. A mythology of speed, power, and precision. A tale of courage and ingenuity. Of the human spirit augmented by steel and fire. The Merlin engine had done more than propel an aircraft. It had defined air supremacy. It had elevated the Mustang from machine to legend. It had rewritten equations, disproved probabilities, and reshaped the skies above Europe. And as the day ended, the echoes lingered, in engines, in clouds, in memory. The hunt was complete, the victory assured, yet the story of the mighty Midget would resonate forever. Some lessons are written in steel, others in exhaust smoke. March 1945. The Rhine Valley glimmered in fading light. The sky emptied of combatants. Engines cooled, propellers stilled. Yet the echo of the Merlin engine lingered, a vibration in memory, a whisper of power that had defied expectation. The mighty Midget had flown, struck, survived, and returned, leaving a trail of legend in its wake. Pilots removed gloves, helmets, masks, faces pale breath visible in the cold evening air. They stepped onto tarmac that had borne witness to triumph and terror. Boots crunching in frost, hearts still racing. Every man carried both relief and awe. For they had seen, felt, and commanded something beyond ordinary. A machine that responded not only to skill, but to instinct, that moved with them, and sometimes seemed to move for them. The line between man and machine blurred. The bond forged in clouds above Europe. Historians would later analyze the numbers. Engine performance, climb rates, speed and altitude. Sortie logs, kill ratios, and mission outcomes. All precise, all factual, yet unable to fully capture the human experience. The sensation of defying gravity while bullets whistled past. The visceral thrill of merging with steel and fire. The sense that the very sky had become an ally. In the data, the story is measurable. In the experience, it is immortal. Mechanics whispered tales of engines that sang differently with each flight. Of pilots claiming the Merlin anticipated maneuvers. Guidance beyond calculation. Perhaps legend. Perhaps truth. All agreed on one fact: reliability, precision, and power had combined to create dominance. And that dominance had changed the course of battles. Outnumbered squadrons could hold corridors. Bomber missions were safer. Enemy morale fractured under the shadow of silver wings. The folklore of the mighty Midget grew as it always does. Silver streaks appearing out of clouds. Diving, climbing, striking, vanishing. Stories of impossible feats, of pilots laughing mid-dive, of bullets deflected by luck, skill, or fate. Each anecdote anchored by fact, the Merlin engine never failing, the aircraft performing beyond expectation, numbers and legend intertwined, inseparable. The story transcended war, becoming myth, memory, and measure all at once. Airfields became places of reverence. The ground crew, still coated in oil and frost, watched Mustangs disappear into clouds. Some swore they could hear the engine's pulse long after it fell silent. The song of victory carried on wind and frost. Engines idling, instruments cooled. Yet the memory of thrust, torque, and power remained. Each Mustang a character, each Merlin engine a heartbeat. A living instrument of war. The strategic impact was undeniable. Bombing missions completed. Airspace dominance established. Enemy formations disrupted. Pilots' instincts amplified by unmatched engineering. Every maneuver, turn, dive, and climb calculated with precision, yet executed with instinct. The human element magnified by machine. Courage multiplied by horsepower. Survival and victory inseparable from design and skill. And yet, there was something more. Something intangible. The psychological edge, the aura of inevitability. Enemy pilots, hesitant formations, broken before engagement. Fear magnified by speed and altitude. The mighty Midget was not just physical, it was symbol. It was legend. a reminder that engineering courage and human ingenuity could overcome odds and perhaps even rewrite the rules of combat. As the sun set, long shadows stretching over the tarmac, pilots gathered. Stories exchanged. Laughter, exhaustion, reverence. Letters, diaries, and photographs preserved not only the facts, but the sensations, the memories, of wings slicing through clouds, of engine hum in ears, of the fragile line between life and death held in the balance of throttle and stick. Each narrative a thread in the larger tapestry of history. Time would pass. Generations would study diagrams, logs, manuals. Engineers would marvel at the Merlin's craftsmanship. Historians would cite data. Yet the human story would endure. The fear, the awe, the thrill, and the reverence. How it felt to ascend through frost and cloud, to dive through light and shadow, to become one with a machine that was more than metal, more than numbers. The mighty Midget lived in both fact and memory. Some lessons were technical: climb rate, acceleration, armament, fuel efficiency, speed and sealing, outperforming enemy fighters, each number contributing to tactical dominance. Others were experiential: fear and exhilaration intertwined, instinct and machine fused, adrenaline and calculation synchronized, the human heartbeat and the Merlin engine beating as one. Each sortie a testament to courage, to engineering, to history itself. And so, as twilight deepened, as engines cooled and hangars emptied, the story of the mighty Midget lingered, in whispers, in logs, in memory. Every pilot a witness, every mechanic a participant, every observer a chronicler. Fact and folklore entwined, legend born from steel and fire, and from the courage of men who dared to ascend, who trusted both themselves and the engine, who made the impossible real. What if the enemy had anticipated the altitude, the speed, the precision? What if the Merlin engine had failed, or man had faltered? History might have written a different story. Yet in that sky, on that day, destiny was forged in cylinders, pistons, and propellers. The mighty Midget redefined air combat. It was more than an aircraft. It was inevitability made visible, a force of precision and power, a predator in clouds and sunlight. Some lessons, however, remain unwritten. The wind still carries whispers of engines in flight. The clouds still obscure silver streaks in imagination. The mighty Midget soars in memory, in legend, in the very idea of what air combat could be. Fact, folklore, and human courage intertwined, leaving echoes that reach across decades, reminding us of the heights machines can achieve, and the heights men can reach when paired with them. The sky finally darkened, the airfield quiet. Yet the story continues, in diaries, in histories, in the imagination. Engines may rest, pilots may age, yet the echo of the Merlin, the roar of the mighty Midget, and the legacy of 25,000 feet remain, suspended in time, a reminder that engineering and courage together can turn the impossible into reality, that some stories never truly land. They linger, they inspire, they endure.